Days Gone. The mention of that game elicits certain responses, feelings, and opinions that span far and wide. But today we're going to take a deep dive into it, from the initial announcement of the game, its critical reception, through some of the Jason Schreier articles, and as well as the game's popular release on PC not that long ago.
Days Gone.
Days Gone.
Welcome to Days Gone, PlayStation's not-so-hidden gem. Days Gone began production in 2015 by Sony's Bend Studio and was officially announced by PlayStation in 2016. I personally became aware of Days Gone during its initial showing at E3 2016, like many others did. At the time, I knew that many gaming outlets were endlessly asking the question, what is Sony Bend doing? They were quiet for a while, and naturally I was curious as well. During the original E3 showing, I was conflicted on what I was seeing, to be honest. I thought it looked kind of cool with the gameplay and especially the horde mechanics they showed off towards the end of that first trailer. No doubt it was quite technologically impressive given the hardware it was running on, the original PlayStation 4 at the time. On the other hand, I was very tired of zombies like a lot of other people. Zombie fatigue was pretty real at that time in popular culture. The market felt oversaturated with zombie content, and I wasn't really confident that anyone could really bring anything new to the table. As we approached the launch several years later, the game was delayed a few times. It's an open world game, so there was a lot of polishing that I'm sure needed to be done. And I saw the delays, but the game honestly was really off my radar. I didn't care about it, I probably wasn't going to buy it at launch, I didn't have any real ties to Sony Bend, so it kind of came and went. Then at launch, I was surprised to see the negative reception of the game. I mean, this is a PlayStation first-party game with a budget of at least over $100 million, so it had to perform well, right? Regardless, I still didn't think much of the reception. I took the reviews and what I saw of the Metascore at face value, and I moved on. Fast forward a few years later, and we get the announcement of the PlayStation Plus collection. This was great news, because I got a PlayStation 5, so now I could have the opportunity to play it for free. It was one of the few PlayStation first-party games that I didn't even delve into. In addition to the PlayStation Plus collection and being able to play it for free, there was a free PS5 upgrade on the way as well, so you could experience the game at 4K and 60 FPS. I began playing the game in December of 2020, and I got about 15 hours into it, and I was really enjoying what I was playing and what I was seeing in the game. Now, I did fall off of it for a while due to the release of
I have no reason to live.
Oh my god!
Anyway, fast forward then to April 2021, and then, after about 60 hours and some 870 in-game days later, and I became the proud owner of a Platinum Trophy for the game. I've seen just about all the game has to offer, including the secret ending, which makes you go back and explore some things after the actual finale of the game, which a lot of people seem to have not done. And it's pretty good, so I suggest that you go back and see that if you haven't. Anyway, after beating the game, I find myself going back and taking a look at the critical receptions and the criticisms surrounding it. I find myself dumbfounded by the popular negative narrative and critiques by reviewers, and ultimately the comparably subpar critical performance compared to other first-party PlayStation Studios games. So with that being said, I want to take a critical look at the timeline of the game, including its receptions, its reviews, controversies, news, leadership departures, sequels, Schreier articles, David Jaffe streams, PC release, and everything else surrounding Days Gone. Like any other game release, there were a plethora of reviews from a variety of outlets available for Days Gone's original release. We spent countless hours reading and watching reviews from various outlets. Instead of going through all of these reviews incessantly, I decided to highlight a few specific outlets that I believe paint an accurate representation of the larger review pool as a whole. So, for illustration purposes, we will be focusing on the reviews from Video Game Chronicle, written by Edwin Evans Thurwill, IGN, written by Lucy O'Brien, and Slant, written by Stephen Scafie. I think these reviews will display a nice range of opinions, one negative, one slightly mixed, and one slightly more positive. From these reviews, and the others that we read, I decided to summarize just a few common criticisms, praises, and anecdotes from them into two distinct categories. These categories are Deacon and supporting characters, as well as narrative and the game's necessity. There were so many more topics and themes I could have covered, and originally I planned to, but the more I wrote this and explored the topics, the more I felt that I was repeating myself over and over again. I believe that the few following topics presented and the depiction of certain outlets' approaches to the reviews paints a reasonable picture and does a nice job of illustrating my larger points. So with that being said, let's begin by taking a look at what reviews said about Days Gone's protagonist, Deacon St. John. Unfortunately, and surprising to me, you will have a difficult time finding outlets saying much of anything positive for our rough and gruff protagonist. In the three reviews I am highlighting, Lucy O'Brien, in her IGN review, was the only one to say anything positive about Deacon. Lucy stated that she enjoyed Deacon's rough and gruff charm, which is certainly not in short supply in the game. She also stated that she found Deacon's, quote, "I ain't no leader" demeanor mentality endearing, end quote. I must agree with Lucy, and specifically I would like to highlight that his ain't no leader mentality is an important character trait and a vital point to his character arc. He does not have time to be a leader, nor does he want to be a leader at the beginning of the game. He is a man on a mission and in pain, laser focused on what he must accomplish, finding his wife Sarah. This is such a significant and integral part to Deacon's character, and this I ain't no leader mentality adapts, changes, and evolves as the story does. Conversely, both the VGC review and the Slant review were more critical of Deacon, as was the mass of reviewers out there. In my opinion, most of these outlets criticize his character to oblivion without actually thinking of the context in which their opinions may be flawed. For example, the VGC review stated in a negative context that Deacon has a mix of unearned gravitas and watered-down chauvinism. I'd like to point out, and as will be the case for many of my counterpoints to topics regarding Deacon, that he is a biker gang member. Of course he is going to exude gravitas, and it will likely be just for show in most cases, and unearned. Think of his context as a rough and tumble biker. It comes with the territory. As would chauvinism in this case, I might add. A white man in a biker gang in the United States. It's probably par for the course. So I would urge reviewers like this to consider the character context and why they might be acting the way they are, instead of haphazardly criticizing them on something that does not actually present merit. Continuing with the VGC review, it stated that Deacon is, quote, another of gaming's weaponized male mourners, as morose and bloodthirsty as his lost wife Sarah was sunny and wholesome, end quote. I'm not sure what this reviewer was expecting of our main character, who just lost his wife and is on a journey to get her back. He is simultaneously mourning a loss while also never losing hope that she is out there. Of course he would be morose in this case. I think you would be challenged to find anyone in his situation that would not be. While clearly the larger point this review may be making here is that he is yet another weapon-yielding, woe-is-me, white male protagonist in video game, which, yes, I will admit, we have too many of, and that has to change. But that is not a valid critique of merit. More so, it seems like an outside influence and forced point to drive a general narrative to demean the main character. The Slant review states that the game is, quote, carefully modulated to accommodate the player's thirst for dominance, end quote, continuing that the player will never feel anything besides, quote, all-encompassing authority, end quote, related to Deacon. To be honest with you, I am not even sure what that means, but if you are like me, when I played this game, I didn't have dominating things on my mind. I was simply trying to survive, and so is our character in this context. Lastly, in regards to Deacon, the Slant review states that, quote, this is a world where a young girl character exists only to suffer, and in the process affirm Deacon's humanity, end quote. This is an accurate statement. There is a young girl in the game that goes through something terrible, and is used as a point to affirm Deacon's humanity. This, my friends, is called good writing. When you craft a story, every theme, element, and supporting character should elevate, mirror, and affirm the characteristics and events surrounding the main character. If you do not do that, your character is uninteresting and would not have a justifiable reason to be the protagonist, let alone justify their own existence in the context of the story itself. So what about the game's supporting characters? Days Gone has a plethora of them, and most are extremely intriguing, complex, and play a critically vital role in the development of the story and Deacon himself. With that being said, I would expect a review to make at least some mention of a supporting cast, given how integral and prevalent they are in the plot. Unfortunately, if you were to look at the VGC or Slant review, like many others out there in the world, you would come up short, as neither of these reviews mention supporting characters at all. Not once. Not a single time. How is that possible? That, in and of itself, is a disservice to the readers of these reviews and the game itself. Lucy O'Brien, on the other hand, did at least briefly mention some supporting characters in her review for IGN. She specifically mentions Boozer, Deacon's biker buddy and all-around ride or die in the game. She states that their relationship, quote, is heartfelt and their bro dynamic is one of the more affecting in Days Gone, end quote. I have to completely agree with Lucy in this context. It really cannot be understated how dynamic and compelling Boozer and Deacon's relationship is. Most people in their life have a ride or die friend like Boozer and Deacon, whose relationship may not be perfect, but they are always there to pick you up when you fall. Both Boozer and Deacon do this for each other, sometimes literally and sometimes figuratively throughout the entire game. Lucy O'Brien also mentions Iron Mike, the leader of the third camp you come across in the game. An old man with a lot of knowledge, wisdom, and genuine hopefulness in humanity's future. O'Brien states that Mike, along with some other older characters in the game, provides some good world-building context, which in my opinion is absolutely true. Now, I must admit, Iron Mike is one of my favorite characters in the game. He is essentially the antithesis to Deacon in every way and provides great juxtaposition to his character. Where Deacon has no time to care about some of the other seemingly inhuman factions in the world that he would refer to, Iron Mike is simply tired of killing, and he wants to be kinder to people and to rebuild society. Iron Mike and Deacon's arcs together are really fantastic in my opinion. One of my favorite quotes in the game comes from Iron Mike himself, which just displays how kind and genuine of a character he is and really paints a great picture for the player about the differences between him and Deacon.
We make the world what it is by what we do. All of us.
Now it is true, there are many other fantastic supporting characters in the game, but it would take me much too long to go through each of them individually for the context of this video. And so, I feel the next logical topic to cover when it comes to the reviews is the actual narrative itself. The narrative of Days Gone has been widely criticized, and for a multitude of reasons. But I believe the most common themes I found in reviews in regards to the narrative can be summed up with the words aimless, cliché, and unsatisfying, all of which I disagree with. Now this is perfectly illustrated in each of the reviews that I have been highlighting. For example, the Slant review states that Days Gone's narrative was, quote, cliché-riddled and of little consequence, end quote. The IGN review states that the game has, quote, a meandering and thematically unsatisfying storyline, end quote. The VGC review states that the plot is, quote, aimless, and builds towards some predictable revelations as to the zombie plague's origin, end quote. I must say, at times while I was reading these reviews, it feels almost as if I played an entirely different game than the reviewers did. I, for one, found the plot engaging and inspiring. I will concede that there are some cliches in the game and tropes related to bikers and the like specifically, but they did not bother me, and they felt organic to the story and its characters, which is of vital importance. I'd like to specifically refute the notion set forth in the VGC review about the origin of the zombie plague being quote-unquote predictable. You do not find out this bit of information until very late in the game, and only in the few moments leading to the revelation do you begin to piece it together. I think that anyone that admits otherwise is not being completely truthful, and I suppose I could have missed something, but I do not think that is the case. Remember, I explored every note, clue, and collectible throughout every step of the game, leading to the Platinum Trophy. In her IGN review, Lucy O'Brien continued to explain, after highlighting what she covered as a meandering plot, that she took a large issue with Deacon and Sarah's relationship and the method in which their story is often explored. Throughout the game, you play flashback sequences between Deacon and his wife, Sarah. I found them to be a nice break from the bleak combat and enjoyed learning more about Sarah and the relationship history she shared with Deacon. Lucy O'Brien mentioned one flashback that particularly annoyed her, something that has been a pretty popular point to criticize the game. You witness Deacon and Sarah's wedding. They are extremely happy, making the priest uncomfortable with their biker and beau demeanor, and Boozer is the only one in attendance, cheering them on from the back of the church. At one point, Sarah says,
"But only if you promise to ride me as much as you ride your bike."
While out of context, that may seem like a terrible line, and I could forgive someone for thinking so. But in my opinion, it highlights the lighthearted and playful nature of their relationship and provides a great contrasting touchstone for some events that you witness later in the game in relation to Sarah. Additionally, keep in mind, she is marrying a biker. Tact with their speech would not be tops on the priority list, even at their wedding, and they get some enjoyment out of making the priest feel uncomfortable. Before I wrap up this section, I wanted to touch on one last prevalent theme I noticed from review outlets. That being the seemingly aggressive nature of which reviews were angry that Days Gone even existed. I find it frustrating that this game was not given as much room to breathe in the quote-unquote justifiable existence department, and was getting torn apart for simply being both another zombie game and another open world game. I do not find it equitable that other content operating within the same space did not need to justify its existence, but Days Gone was being asked to. The game was unabashedly destroyed by VGC, specifically for being an quote unnecessary open world game in a year already packed with 50-hour plus endeavors, and that it rarely makes the case for its own existence. End quote. That is not a critique. How, as a reviewer, can you hold a game accountable to the fact that there are others within the same genre or style that were already released in the same year? As if Days Gone was required to bear the brunt of justifying its own existence because you are comparing other, unrelated media to it. If that is the lens in which you are approaching a review, then your opinion is already jaded and unfocused on the merit of the game itself. Rather, it is a misinformed guise clouded by invalid, vapid, and hollow comparisons that have no reason to exist themselves within the review space. Now that we have covered the preceding topics, I wanted to add that I planned on discussing the individual reviewers themselves. I was going to delve into the hypocrisy I found in some of the review history when compared to Days Gone. However, as I wrote and recorded this, I felt myself getting angry and honestly vindictive for no reason. These are reviews after all, and they are opinion-based. However, that is not to understate the fact that I feel some reviewers did not actually play through the game or provide it a fair chance. But, with Iron Mike's quote ringing in my head, I'm going to leave this section there. So now that you have a good idea of the critical reception of the game, and in many cases why I believe the reviews were flawed or hypocritical, but where's the game now? In the years since its initial release, Days Gone has amassed an almost cult classic-like following. Not the largest fan base, but a passionate one that loves the game, its characters, and the story it told. If you have your pulse on the gaming world, you know that Days Gone has been making headlines once again. Some for good reasons, and some concerning. In a recent article published on Bloomberg by journalist Jason Schreier, he goes into detail that PlayStation and Sony are obsessed with blockbuster video game franchises. This, according to Schreier, is causing unrest inside of the PlayStation first-party studios. In the article, Schreier explains that the same year Days Gone released, Bend Studio pitched a sequel to the game. Now, while it is ultimately profitable for the company, Days Gone launched with lukewarm to bad critical reception, as we have seen this far in this video. Needless to say, the game's sequel wasn't seen as a viable option, and therefore Bend Studio's pitch was shot down. One team within the studio was moved to assist Naughty Dog with a multiplayer game, but the second team was assigned to work on a new Uncharted game with supervision from Naughty Dog. Now, since this article's initial release, it's also come to light that Bend Studio is indeed working on a new IP for PlayStation's first-party games. Ultimately, this decision led to top leads leaving the studio, including one half of the Days Gone directing team, Jeff Ross. According to Schreier, Ben didn't want to do this and assist Naughty Dog, and leads remaining after Ross's departure were granted their wish, taken off the Uncharted project, and are now working on another original title. Now, it is yet to be seen what this title is, including if it will ultimately be a Days Gone sequel or not, though that seems unlikely if this information in Schreier's article is to be believed. Worth noting here that John Garvin, the writer and the other half of the directing team, left Bend Studio just 6 days after the game's launch. This comes according to Garvin himself when he spoke with another ex-PlayStation director, David Jaffe. Jaffe has been making headlines himself lately for his blunt and honest reactions to some of the seemingly dismal decisions PlayStation has been making. Jaffe to date has interviewed both Garvin and Ross about Days Gone, the fallout, the reception, and events since the game's launch. They are very telling interviews, albeit long and unfocused at points. Within them, however, we find out some very interesting information that I'd like to point out. Number 1. Garvin supposedly left due to a mutual agreement between him and Sony that he was getting too aggressive and heated in development processes. Garvin insinuated he could see the writing on the wall, and therefore mutually decided to part ways with the studio. Jeff Ross was not as bluntly open, stating explicitly that he was still under an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, with PlayStation and had to tread carefully. Ross did offer some key and important anecdotes about the game, however, reception, and its controversy. He and Garvin did butt heads during production a lot, but was ultimately proud of their end product. Number 2, Ross agrees to a point with a lot of the criticism that reviewers shed, specifically within the first 8 hours or so of the game. However, he feels that many did not go deep enough or fully see the arcs of the main characters or representation of non-white, non-straight men in the game. Something he feels they focused on by making compelling supporting characters first that had these satiant identities, which they were criticized on not including in the game. Number 3. Ross stated that he left due to decisions that were being made and that they were expanding as a studio, bringing people in to do the jobs that he was already used to doing, and he did not want to step on anyone's toes. Number 4. Ross was adamant with Jaffe in saying that Days Gone 2 is not confirmed to not be in development. He was careful in his wording, but encouraged Jaffe and his audience to not fully invest in the popular narrative of the sequel's supposed cancellation or non-existence. I really highly recommend that if you have the time to go back and watch these interviews. I will link them in the description of the video below. With Jason Schreier's article, Jeff Ross's and John Garvin's interviews, Days Gone was propelled back into the spotlight. The game was making headlines again, and passionate fans of PlayStation's not-so-hidden gem were beginning to take to social media and express their love for the game. Now, soon after the article and news of the potentially scrapped sequel, fans joined forces and began a petition requesting that PlayStation approve the production of Days Gone 2, specifically citing the game's cliffhanger fully realized in what is popularly known as the secret ending, requiring you to spend a few more days within the game to experience it. At the time of recording this, the petition has north of 120,000 signatures attached to it. No small number, but probably not the quote-unquote millions the petition organizer was looking for to really draw PlayStation's attention. Regardless, the petition has drawn attention from directors John Garvin and Jeff Ross, both taking to social media to express their support of the movement. All this news and seemingly troubling signs for any potential sequel has ignited the fanbase, just in time for the second-year anniversary of the game as well, which was celebrated a few months ago. In addition to this, Days Gone is following suit with some other PlayStation first-party titles and making its way to PC. Days Gone released on PC on May 18th, 2021, and has received great reception from the fanbase on PC. It currently sits with some very, very positive ratings on Steam, and has also received some very positive critical reception for its PC release. And so, I think that's ultimately where I'd like to wrap this up. So after watching this video, if you find yourself curious about all the news, controversy, or just purely the game itself, please play it. There are more ways to access the game now than ever before. It was free on PS Plus for PS4, it is on the PlayStation Plus collection on PS5 with the 60 FPS 4K upgrade, and has now been released on PC with more graphics options, including ultra-wide support than ever before. I sincerely recommend giving the game a chance. It's not a perfect game, it's not without its flaws, but it certainly deserves a chance. In my 60-some hours with the game, I found myself constantly surprised and inspired by the characters, the world, and the stakes of the gameplay. There is some serious heart and grit to its story and its characters, and I believe it deserves to sit at the top of the PlayStation exclusive mountain. It may not be a multi-million seller, but that does not mean it does not deserve your attention. This is Josh with Haptic Intel telling you not to listen to the critics and don't believe the lies. We want to thank everybody for watching this video. This is our first kind of delve into a more long-form, informative, researched, and scripted video. If you like what you saw in the video, if you like what you heard, if you liked listening to me, please make sure you subscribe to Haptic Intel, give this video a like, share it with your friends. We do a lot of podcasting, a lot of Let's Plays, you know, your typical gaming stuff. But I guarantee you will enjoy our spin on it. We are always honest in our opinions, and they are very complex and very different. So please like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. We really appreciate you checking this out. Have a fantastic day,